Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Access Granted. It's a happy Friday, so I am having a great time having Art Poghosyan with me. He has a great experience, a strong experience in the identity and security space. And Art, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Nauman. And, happy Friday.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, but before I start, I heard that you love cigars, right? And so, what is your best cigar? And when you're celebrating a big win or a milestone, which cigar you go with?
Yeah, no, I do. And it's like asking a kid, what's your favorite candy? But I like a few brands. I think Cohiba is one that I like. And I can tend to go to that brand more than others.
Absolutely. I think as Winston Churchill once said that I'm easily satisfied with the very best. Right? So and I'm sure that it applies to both cigars and creating a top tier cybersecurity company, Britive, which we'll talk further. But before we start, tell us about your background, right? Where have you spent most of your time, even before founding this amazing startup? Which background and which career did you come from?
Yeah, so 20 plus years has been in cybersecurity and identity access management. I started as part of sort of consulting and services organization, and worked through the business side of the identity management as well as the technology side. Worked with a lot of enterprise organizations. Before Bright, I've also started a business called Advanced Technology Solutions. We're also an identity access management company. Identity and access has been the world that I'm in. I've been in that world over 2 decades, and I think things have just
of these NHIs. So what you see happen.
Fantastic. And I think we need people like you who have been in this space and are looking to do something different, something new, challenging the old world of doing things. Not that it is bad, but the world has moved so fast, right? With the cloud innovation, AI innovation that is happening, the problem space is very different. And I think this is one space, identity and access in general, is a space which is screaming for innovation. Legacies have not innovated to keep up with the cloud and multi-cloud and hybrid world. And this is showing up. So tell us about when you conceived this idea of building Britive, right? What were you thinking? I'm sure that there was a pain. There was discussions with several CISOs and customers. Walk us through about what you were thinking, you and your co-founders, and how did you came up with this idea, and how did you validate it that it's big enough pain that we should go and build something new for the customers?
Yeah. So first thing I will say is the idea behind Brighter wasn't just mine. It was together with my co-founders, and it's the same founding team here at Brighter that also co-founded Advancer, the company before Brighter. So I think it is very. It's an interesting story, and very interestingly, it is related to major, technology shifts that were already happening in the world and in the tech world specifically. Cloud adoption, the public cloud infrastructure, new technologies, new modern stack. Companies like AWS and GCP and Azure and Oracle and so on, introducing a whole new alternative to the data center-based world. And having been in the identity space and having worked with technology vendors for almost 2 decades, we had a front row seat in what was actually happening in the industry and what the businesses were looking for in enterprise or small or commercial organizations. And what they were looking for is a more cloud native IAM stack or even like security stack in general. And the reason for that is because the cloud is so different, because everything that is done in the cloud environments, even like application development and deployment, is done differently than in the data center world. And because of that, the whole paradigm around identity was already changing. This is right around 2014, 15 timeframe. And it just so happened that our business, Advanced, was acquired by Optiv, and we essentially had this opportunity to kind of expand our the research into a lot broader set of companies through Optiv, and see that at scale what was happening in space. We certainly had some great design partners from the earliest stage where they contributed, companies in the security as well as cloud teams that contributed their requirements, but also their vision of what they were looking for in a cloud native IAM and privilege management solution. And that really got us started building the great platform that we have today.
That's fantastic. And I think one of the key differentiator of Britive platform is just-in-time ephemeral access, right? Done in a unified way across the board. So how is that approach addressing the security challenges of today's modern enterprises? And I'm sure that you probably would have discussed this with the CISOs back then when you were conceiving the idea, and now you talk to CISOs and customers now. So has anything changed, and how is this just-in-time ephemeral access important in the modern era, especially?
Yeah, I would say this is one of the fundamental concepts that we validated early on in the product design and to really the incubation stage. And the reason this was fundamental for us was because we recognized that I mentioned the paradigm change, right, in the tech stack. We saw clearly that identity and access management solutions that were built for a data center-based technologies and perimeter-based technologies were heavily dependent on, there being a first and second line of, security and controls like the perimeter and the firewall and so on, that would protect the identity infrastructure and protect the identity products inside. And that was completely the opposite in the cloud world. Because of that, the assumption about, how access is being done, how it's being done in the data center based world, where users are provided, access to applications, data, infrastructure based on their need, but that access is essentially there 24/7 by 365, whether they need that or are using it or not. And that concept for us was not going to be the right concept for the cloud native world. One, in the cloud environments, especially cloud infrastructure, a lot of resources and workloads are ephemeral. They come up in seconds and they go down in minutes, right? And trying to bring that static model of access into that environment was one of the challenges the companies were facing. Because of that, we're thinking about a model where access is like the ephemeral nature of the cloud. It is there when the user needs it, and it's gone when they don't need it or are not actively using that. So that was a concept that was really important to validate early on. I remember the first reaction from about a dozen or so security officers and technology officers was like, can this really be done? Because they'd be really awesome. And that's how we kind of went about building the platform based on really sort of these core fundamental principles and validating that along the way with the actual, the users, the customers.
Yeah. So in a way, by design, your innovative approach that you took is in a way directly challenges the traditional vault-based PAM approaches that have been there for decades. Do you see that, customers who have been used to these vault-based legacy PAM approaches, they are leading into this new modern world and say, okay, yeah, this is the way to go in the modern era, or they are fighting it, or you see mix of both in your interaction with customers?
I think initially they were ignoring it. Initially, it was not something that they thought was even relevant. Over time, the tone changed, and they kind of started showing this kind of Me Too, attitude. Like, yes, we do have just in time as well, but I think today is truly that moment of truth in the real world, in the real companies and organizations that are putting various different technologies and options and products to test. And what we're seeing very clearly is, the existing PAM products are just not built for the new world, for the new ephemeral world. As much as they would like to present what they have as it's a different just-in-time option, the vote from the customers shows the opposite. That that technology is.
My advice to someone who's starting now means who is just starting their career.
Fantastic. I think I believe in this. I believe in this legacy of incumbents, right, where they can see things happening around them, but they're just center of gravity keeps pulling them back on things that they have built and is a cash cow for them. So and then always innovation comes from new players who leads the market and create a category. And this is what I think Britive is doing in the CPAM space. But according to, in a similar related topic, right? There's another term that is becoming very popular. It's called NHIs, non-human identities. And I think it's Gartner used to call it something else, machine users, non-human users. At the end of the day, do you think it's a new concept, and how it's becoming relevant and important, especially in the cloud world? Why the practitioners and security architects and CISOs needs to consider this as an important aspect of the posture, something that a must-have in terms of addressing it. Based on the new world, how do you see that, and how is Britive handling this for their customers?
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure. And I think we have to think for a new term, NHI, we have to thank some creative marketers in the space. But it's definitely worth the attention. I'll explain why. As far as why I think it's a new thing, but I also think that it's not a fundamentally new and different concept. It's new because, as I was mentioning before, when we were looking at the change in the technology stack and the change in the processes and so on, very clearly it was a picture where the human users, the human identities, and their access needs were quickly being exceeded by the non-human interaction, which is, you can put in that category CI/CD pipeline, infrastructure as code, or
RPAs, robotic processes, or various other, API to API communications and so on.
And that is very important for today's technology stack, very important for modern development processes, the DevOps and so on. And it's actually the way this technologies work and scale, the cloud infrastructure. So from that standpoint, it is new, yet it requires policy-based authorization and access like humans do. It is different because you can't apply multi-factor authentication like you do for humans to secure that identity for a service or a process. So you have to have a different approach, a different architecture to address that. The similarity to the data center-based technologies here is that, of course, service accounts existed long time. You always had script. You always had some kind of a procedure that would call a database and retrieve data that requires credentials. Yes, there is nothing groundbreaking from that standpoint. But again, the difference here is in the cloud world, it's a lot more dynamic. And in the cloud world, like in the case of a human privileged user, only having a login and a credential is not sufficient. It's much more dynamic, and it really goes beyond the access, the static access, and it really requires more dynamic authorization to support the current processes. So that's my take. And from Britive standpoint, how we always looked at that, human versus non-human, it's always been for us in a requirement that a cloud and modern identity management product or platform should be able to support. I can tell you that I don't know of a single customer who wants multiple identity management systems, one for non-human, one for human, one for cloud, and one for not cloud, right? So that's every organization is looking for ways to converge, unify identity, because it's complex and there's a lot of security implications when you have these siloed and separate environments.
That's great to hear that Britive is already taking care of that in the product as a whole, because I agree, customers don't want fragmented approaches to solve a certain problem. And I think you talk about NHIs, I think it's becoming more critical because humans are not paying attention to it, but threat actors are. And I was actually investigating a breach that happened to a major automobile manufacturer out of Europe, where somebody, threat actors, they were scanning the public GitHubs, and they were able to find the security keys and API tokens, which basically they used to start that breach, right, and literally move in. So there's a lot, and there are like 10x, 100x more NHIs than compared to humans, and there is no SSO and MFA that gets applied to them, right? So it's important that people do think about that, and I'm seeing that there's awareness coming in. There are people, industry leaders, who are trying to give this awareness, and great to see that Britive is also part of it from this perspective. Let me ask you another question. So in terms of overall identity stack, there are obviously IDPs that people really understand well, right? It could be Oktas of the world, Ping Identity of the world, Microsoft Entra ID is there. But what other categories you see as an important part of that stack? So let's say a CISO or a VP of infrastructure who is trying to get the stack up and running as part of the cybersecurity play. Aside from this IDP, you mentioned CPAM, right? But what other areas you see as critical? And who do you see as a modern player that you think would be a good one to look at? In addition to, let's say, if I am the new CIO or VP of infrastructure trying to build this modern identity stack that covers my, obviously management as well as compliance security. From your perspective, how do you see this world evolving, and what are the new players?
That's a great question of mine, and I think at this time, kind of where the different new technologies are in their maturity and evolution level, there's still a lot of unknowns and questions to be answered, right? So I'll do my best to give you my take and kind of in my view how the space will evolve. You rightly pointed out identity, the identity provider, the SSO authentication solutions are fairly mature for human type of users, interactive type of users. And I'm sure there's more that we'll see there. For example, the passwordless, biometric-based authentication, even blockchain-based technologies are still continuing to change, even bring improvements in that. But I think one of the areas is still to really figure out the best solutions around like non-human identity verification, authentication, and apply additional controls and securities at the identity level. Next thing is really the identity access management, like that, for these identities, human and not human, but access management in a way that is much more dynamic and secure. I will keep emphasizing security because I think again from from the history standpoint,
Identity management solutions were never built to be security solutions.
because of the perimeter, but they have to be in the new world. So identity and security become one concept, not two separate concepts. So more of the security feature functionality will emerge in the identity management product and technologies, where there is some elements of threat detection response. There is some proactive, enforcement based on risk profile of the identity or the activity that they're performing. And I think the other very important aspect is that, governance and audit is always a very important requirement for the management solution. So this is something, again, I think in the new world, new stack needs to be applied differently. I'll give you this good example, how access governance certification products were built and are currently used in the data center. They're very reactive. Quarterly access reviews to go and clean up, access for people who don't need that access is not a appropriate type of process or control in the cloud environment where things change in a matter of seconds, not like months or weeks, right? So that again will change. I think we'll see new governance and administration type of functionality or products emerge to really do it in the modern way, do it in the right way that's appropriate for the new world. And lastly, I will say, I think there's already a very clear trend in convergence of the different product categories that have existed. If you just look at even the identity provider to governance to access management, privilege management, and all that sort of becomes
one platform
where the customers don't really need to buy 3 products or 4 products to address this one big requirement to secure their identities, right? So I think that's essentially where we're headed from the technology kind of a product category standpoint.
Got it. So what you're saying is today maybe the bigger umbrella is identity and access management, but within that you have IDP players, you have CPAM players or Cloud PAM players, and then you have IGA type players. And what you foresee is customer would want to have it as one stack, right? Today because they're all doing their things in a niche way, and their DNA is very different in terms of what they solve. But you see that in the future, this is all combined together as one solution. So I think that's to me, I think customers would want to have this type of consolidation. Right now there's a lot of me too, right? People, they have certain things that they're working on, but they also, they have good marketing people. They always say, we do this too. But when you drill down, you say, okay, this is not actually what an enterprise grade product should do. But I can see that converging at some point, and it's platformization is happening pretty much in the entire security stack. And talk about, how do you compare this CPAM and IDP as well as IGA tools with the CNAP, like a Wiz of the world and Orcas of the world? Do you see this as more like a solution play? How do the two worlds come together to help out the customer?
Yeah, another very sort of interesting question to think about. What does the future look like for these adjacent, cloud native, technologies like CNAP and SCSPM and so on, DSPM also. I think today there's already a very strong sort of synergistic combination already emerging from posture management solutions to the cloud native privilege and identity management solutions. Here's why. As with anything else, security functions always say you can't secure what you can't see. So visibility comes first. And that's what CNAP, CSPM products brought to market, visibility into the cloud security posture, which also includes the identity security posture, which now shows that it's it's a pretty ugly picture in any organization where this, the visibility products are used. There's literally thousands of overprivileged identities with standing access, with AWS admin everywhere, and GCP and so on. There are SaaS admins that are really like it's a huge exposure. It's a huge exposure from security standpoint. So where it leads next is the remediation, and the big question to answer there is what is the scalable and automated remediation to apply here to solve that, to remove the risk that's there, because manual is not an option. That is definitely not an option. And typically, in the audits in the past, you'd have network vulnerability findings that would go back to the network team and servers and so on. And they would sort of apply some kind of a manual remediation process and take care of that. But in the cloud, it is literally not an option. So the solution has to be something really, again, cloud native, scalable, automated solution. And that's where, from identity security standpoint, the security findings, the risk findings, essentially become, transition to the identity teams to remediate. Or today, with the traditional tooling, they're not able to, and so it now starts really showing the compelling need to have the cloud native identity and privilege management, especially a technology, a platform that is able to eliminate standing risk, also apply policies like least privilege policy, also be able to differentiate the human from non-human identities so that you can apply additional control like authorization, authentication, multi-factor where it applies, or work with identity federation where that works, or that there's an option like that. So already there's a very strong sort of synergistic use case between the posture visibility products and modern identity and privilege management solutions. Will there be one truly unified security identity platform in the near future? I don't know. I think that there's definitely going to be vendors who move in that direction, to again build that one unified single platform. But I think time will show. I think there is definitely a lot of complexity to sort through to be able to deliver all that functionality in one platform.
Got it. No, I think you are absolutely right. And by the way, thanks for sharing these insights. Sometimes when you talk about new innovation, you really cannot just rely on Gartners of the world, because in my opinion, they are more about reporting the news and not creating the news. So innovative founders are about creating the news, and people learn from people. That's how we grow. So thanks for sharing that. I do see that I'm sure that there's inclination from larger vendors to, in a way, consolidate, right, and platformize make it easier for customers. But I think customers do have a choice today. They want innovation. They want a problem to the pain that they have. And it's very easy for them today to change vendors, right? So as long as the platformization happens and that vendor is able to do a decent enough job in terms of innovating, right, the cycle of innovation must not stop, because things around us are moving very fast. So that's a great insight. And also, but what I learned from you is, let's say if I am a CISO, or if I am an infrastructure who's trying to put together a minimum identity stack, security stack, I would go for IDP like Oktas of the world, or Ping. I'll pick one from this selection. I'll pick maybe a Britive like a solution, which is modern, to the cloud, to the on-prem as well. Maybe for IGA, I'll pick Zilla or Savient, some modern players who can do IGA. And then I have my CNAP, which is like a Wiz or Orca. So that basically, in a way, at minimum, creates my stack. And I can pick and choose based on what is more modern, what solves my immediate problems of today. And obviously, future-proof enough that tomorrow, if there are AI challenges or AI use cases, I can still easily add those use cases, as opposed to redesigning everything from the scratch and again shoehorning that traditional user group and vaulting approaches to a certain problem. So that's a great insight. We are coming closer to an end, but one question I really wanted to ask you. There are a lot of founders who wants to build their product in SaaS, right? As a SaaS, and and I'm sure that when you were looking at the idea, the first obviously milestone is to come up with an idea, validate with the customers. The more important thing is how do we actually execute this, right? How do you make it to reality? So what were you thinking when you're talking to cloud providers and you were looking around? What was your experience, and what would be your some recommendations for aspiring founders who wants to build something? How cloud providers can help in this, and what has been your experience building Britive?
So, in a way, I'm interpreting this as from the architectural and business decision standpoint of why we went this direction and built a SaaS technology. I'm happy to talk about it. It was definitely an important decision point for us because SaaS for enterprise security and enterprise IAM it was when we started, designing the product, was still not a very well accepted kind of a model. Of course, you had Okta, who kind of really pioneered the SaaS model for authentication, and they saw their fair share of challenges in the initial adoption process when companies had to accept that their identity management product will be in the cloud. Now we were dealing with privileged access and authorization, but for us, the benefits of building a SaaS modern technology on a modern platform like AWS, or the benefits were far greater than building it in the traditional software model. There's so much that our technology is using, and over time we've evolved thanks to that rich technology stack, or the services, native services that are in the platform, AWS in this case, that allowed us to build a highly scalable, highly modern technology, like what we have for modern privileged access management. I think the founder essentially has to evaluate the different options and see what's right for their business. I can't say this is the right model for every enterprise or every security product. There's certainly security products that make a lot more sense for on-prem deployment, and maybe because they address on-prem technologies primarily. But SaaS, to me, is essentially that future architecture. And if your goal is to address the cloud native and the modern stack, I think there's an argument to be made that you should build modern and cloud native to address that world.
Did you tap into any specific programs from CSPs to being a no-name startup, right? All of a sudden coming from where? Did you get any help from AWS in terms of some accelerator programs and things like that?
Yeah, and AWS definitely was had a lead over others at the time, offering incentives for founders to build on AWS, credits, architectural support. There was definitely support from AWS in our case, but now all providers actually offer similar incentives. So at this point, it's kind of almost like a level playing field. You could build on Google or Azure or AWS or even Oracle if you have some incentives. But ultimately, it's what you're building and which infrastructure platform is best aligned and the most sort of mature for all the different services that your products will need is going to be the key question.
Fantastic. What's next for Britive, right? I know that you guys have some amazing customers who trust the product. They love the product. What's next on your mind or on your radar in terms of new innovation that Britive is going to bring to the industry, aligned to what we are seeing in the industry from a trends perspective?
Yeah, we have a lot of great ideas, as well as specific requirements and use cases that we're working to address. The partnership with customers has been tremendous for the evolution of our technology. And a lot of what we do, a lot of what we build comes either directly from our customers or, our prospects, or they validate our ideas and, give us feedback to continue building. Some of the things that we're looking to do today is, there's various interesting, ideas around how AI can be incorporated in our technology that we're already, we're already building a few things around that. Also, how to address the AI use case generally for access and identity management. I think there's also this massive opportunity to, bring the modern identity and privileged access management to non-infrastructure technologies. That is, your data as a service, your SaaS ecosystem, your, really anything that is in the new technology stack that is very rapidly gaining adoption. Containerized technologies, Kubernetes, and so on. There's a huge trend for adoption. So there's a lot of opportunities to address for Britive. We're just going to be focused on building what the market needs next. Thanks to our great partnership with our customers.
That's fantastic. Any lessons learned or one key takeaway that you want to leave the audience with in terms of people who are trying to improve this risk posture, identity posture, right? And they have like thousands of people around them selling their own products. How should they base their approach on, right? What should be that fundamental pillar that they should focus on?
Yeah. Every day I take a pause and think about our the security decision makers and also cloud decision makers. I think about how they see the world and how they what they see and what they hear. And in this kind of very confusing and somewhat noisy market, they have to make decisions about what product to buy, what to build, what to integrate, and that's not easy. I think it's difficult to even follow certain category-based approch. You mentioned Gartner earlier, right? Even the Gartner and other analyst firms today still haven't fully categorized everything that's in the market. And what they've categorized is kind of mostly the traditional products in the market, where the market already needs the new technologies. So that's a process from the decision maker standpoint, whether it's cloud or security. I think my biggest advice is to really anchor your decisions on what you need, as opposed to what you're being sold, or from the research standpoint, what you're being promoted to buy. It's not easy to always kind of really start there, because in every organization there's a consensus, there's some kind of a stakeholder group in decision-making process, but that's the way that I think most organizations are successfully making the right decisions and long-term investments are being made, rather than just kind of chasing the next new shiny object in the market. There's so much noise and so much confusion about that.
Great advice, Art. Thanks, Art, for your time, and congratulations on building an iconic company that's helping customers with identity and security. I love seeing companies who have happy customers, and they love to endorse and keep innovating. And we'll hopefully meet in the next podcast at some point. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, Nauman, for having me. Take care.
Thank you.